Have you seen this TikToker on your feed before? This is Yoon Jia. She's a popular content creator based in South Korea. On the morning of the 11th of September, she started her TikTok livestream, something she did every morning. But this time would be different. No one knew this would be the last stream she ever did. Well, almost no one. After speaking with her fans for hours, she ended the stream at 3 p.m. We now know that about 30 minutes after this, she went missing. 3 days later, on the morning of the 14th, her body was found on a mountain in Muju County, and it was clear that she'd been murdered. This discovery and the following investigation shook the online community. It involves money, power, lies, and manipulation, and it's further ignited debate over critical social issues both in South Korea and abroad. This is the story of Yoon Jia. Yoon Jia was an aspiring actress and social media celebrity. Many people enjoyed her bubbly personality, and she never lacked an audience for her live streams, which often consisted of her singing, dancing, eating, and just enjoying nature. She was growing fast, and the rising star had attracted many generous donors to her channel. Eventually, she caught the eye of a mysterious figure who quickly rose to the top of the donor list. It was an anonymous account that went by the name Black Cat. Now, Black Cat was quite well known in some circles in the social media industry, as they had a reputation for very generous donations to many creators. No one knew much about Black Cat except that they had claimed to be the CEO of an IT company and also assisted up-and-coming creators gain popularity. This, in combination with their large donations, earned them the nickname of Midas Hand. After some time, Black Cat eventually got into contact with Jia and introduced himself as Mr. Tre, a 50-year-old tech CEO. Eventually, Mr. Tre offered to become Jia's manager, claiming that with his wealth, connections, and experience, he could provide creative and financial support to grow her follower count and career. All things he claimed to have done for others successfully. It seems that he was quite convincing, and Jia likely thought this was her real shot to make her dreams come true. They came to an agreement and signed an exclusive contract. Mr. Tre began managing her. From my understanding, she and Mr. Tre would also start occasionally meeting in person to discuss business. It seems that at first things were going well. Jia's follower count was quickly climbing. After some time though, Mr. Tre became more demanding. Watching her live streams like a hawk, he would constantly send DMs critiquing the little things she was doing. If she didn't do as he said, he would go on a tirade and even start making threats. On top of that, he forced her to begin streaming at earlier and earlier hours. It appears his reasoning for this was to gain more foreign viewers. This is part of what she became known for amongst her foreign and local viewers, with many being impressed by her work ethic to be out and about streaming at the early hours of 7 a.m. Monday through Saturday. Despite following his instructions and intense schedule, Mr. Tre's micromanaging wasn't limited to content creation. Outside of work hours, he would constantly spam text her wanting to know where she is and who she's with. An acquaintance of Jia recalled hanging out with her one night and noticing that she had to keep opening an app that tagged her location, and her phone was frequently getting notifications. At one point, they said they counted her phone vibrating around 30 times in a single minute. All were messages from Mr. Tre. It had been several months since they began their partnership. The relationship continued to sour, and Jia's friends noticed she was growing increasingly exhausted. None of her audience had any idea all of this was happening behind the scenes. It's not clear to me how, but on the 10th of September, Jia discovered something shocking about Mr. Tre. He had been lying about who he was the whole time. He wasn't some social media expert, he wasn't a CEO of some tech company, and it turns out he wasn't even rich. As a matter of fact, he was deep in debt, so much so that his house was actually being put up for a forced auction the next day, since he hadn't been able to make the payments. Mr. Tre had scammed other creators prior to Jia, having approached them with the same lie about who he was and what he could do for them. These other victims noted the same pattern of behavior, where he became increasingly demanding over time until they eventually ended their partnership with him. Jia confronted him, telling him that she was now ending their partnership. Panicked and witnessing his life falling apart around him, he came to see Jia personally. This led to an incredibly bizarre interaction. CCTV footage caught Mr. Tre aggressively confronting her, followed by dropping to his knees and begging Jia to reconsider her decision. This act of desperation didn't win him any favors with her, and we can see she steps away from him. She begins using her phone for something when he steps forward and grabs the phone right out of her hands. As far as I'm aware, the CCTV doesn't record audio, so it's unknown what was exactly said. But they continue talking for a little, and Mr. Trey eventually leaves, appearing defeated. The next morning at 7 a.m. in Incheon, Jia began her livestream like usual, with all seeming normal. At around 3 p.m., she said goodbye to her audience, but tragically, it would be for the last time. The exact details of what happened next haven't been made public as far as I'm aware, but at 3:27 p.m., CCTV captured what appeared to be her trying to exit out of a car and then being forcefully pulled back in, followed by the door closing. We now know that it was Mr. Trey in that car and that he strangled her to death. He then returned to his home in Seoul, and at around 10 p.m. CCTV recorded him leaving his building, but this time he was pulling a luggage with unknown contents. He loaded it into his car and began driving to a remote mountain area in Muju. He had obviously done some level of planning beforehand, as he made 8 stops along the way in an attempt to try and throw off any potential investigation. He dumped the body, which was inside the luggage, in a grassy field and began driving away when his car got stuck in a ditch. It seems he struggled to free it from the embankment, and so he just abandoned the car. The exact time and dates of the key events vary depending on the source, but I've been piecing together the details from these various sources to reconstruct the events in a way that makes the most sense. Jia had been murdered on the 11th at 3:30 p.m. Her father had called police to report her missing on the 12th at 4 p.m. Police were able to find out that she was last seen in a car belonging to Mr. Trey. They then traced the route of the car, and at around 5 a.m. on the 13th, they discovered the car abandoned in a ditch on a mountain in Muju. The strange part is that within a kilometer from this area, they actually found Mr. Trey. I have no idea what he was doing here, and no sources seem to provide anything close to an answer to this. I'm not sure if he just didn't bother going very far since his car was stuck or what. In any case, police arrested him for obstruction as he refused to provide his ID to them. The body is reported to have been found at 11:05 a.m. on the 14th of September. Reports indicate that the body was located just 50 to 100 meters of where Mr. Trey was arrested, and where the car had been abandoned. The police stated while he was being interrogated, he at first denied any knowledge or involvement, but when they informed him that they had found the body, he confessed to everything. One of the most shocking and frustrating details of this story is that it was later learned that Mr. Trey was actually already on trial for another case. As it turns out, back in December, he was arrested for assaulting and imprisoning a woman in his house. She was also a TikTok creator, just like Jia. However, despite being on trial, he was not detained for his actions, which allowed him to move freely and therefore commit this horrible murder. The facts of the case have sparked numerous debates both domestically and abroad. Unfortunately, this type of crime is not an isolated incident. Around the world, there have been cases of female influencers being murdered by obsessive viewers, which has led to many creators warning others about these kinds of fans, especially the high donors, as more often than not, they will be expecting something more for their money. The parasocial nature of streaming is what draws people to it, but it's also a great risk, as the creators don't know who they could be interacting with. And with more people increasingly consuming content, especially as a form of escapism, there is the troubling possibility that these kinds of incidents could become more frequent. This case comes at a time in South Korea where there is a rise in feminism due to lack of protections for women, especially when it comes to violent and sexual crime. In fact, sometimes it can seem like the perpetrators are more protected than the victims. I'm sure you've noticed that I've only referred to Mr. Trey by his family name, as his first name hasn't been made public. Not only that, but the only footage of him available has his face blurred, and he's allowed to conceal his identity further with a hat and mask. This is common due to Korea's strong defamation laws, so news broadcasts tend to protect their identity until they are convicted in court. Some exceptions are made under certain circumstances, though. But in this case, it is a bit weird considering he already confessed to the crime. Some of the actions and statements of a minority on the feminist camp have been called radical, and so there has been a counter-response resulting in a rise in anti-feminist sentiments. Oddly enough, though, it's to the point that anything that could be interpreted as potentially feminist-leaning can be met with backlash. Even something like attending a women's university and having short hair. Suffice it to say that these kind of subjects can be seen as sensitive, and that's on top of the whole birth rate crisis, which most people already know about. But I digress. While researching this case, I've come across comments blaming Jia for not being careful, as well as some blaming her parents for not protecting her well enough. But these are in the minority. Generally speaking, the majority of comments I'm seeing are expressing love, support, and sending well wishes. It's clear that she is and will be remembered for her bubbly personality and for brightening the days of her viewers. On a personal note, when I had first heard of this case, I read up on it and then spoke about it with my wife, who was obviously horrified at the story. But when I showed her who it was, she gasped. As it turns out, my wife semi-frequently watched her live streams when she had a chance to, and had even conversed with her via the comments. She had nothing but nice things to say about Jia, and I suspect that this is the case for everyone who interacted with her or knew her. Thanks for watching. If you find the concept of parasocial relationships interesting, then I think you'll like this video on AI psychosis. It discusses how ChatGPT has deluded some people into believing things like they're God, or has even led to people committing murder. And I'll see you in the next one.